Here we go. Alright, this is a much anticipated matchup
Indeed
between
it is.
Jay and Reggie.
Two of our good friends.
Mm-hmm. And highly talented competitors. Jay is running Beheaded, Luciya, and Remiliss. So for those not familiar, Jay was the world champion of Gen Con 2018. Reggie has gained quite a reputation in playtesting for churning out immense amounts of games. He is probably one of the most experienced players, probably in the world. He's played hundreds of games at the very least, has a ton of matchup experience, and just isn't afraid of anyone. Alright, I'm very excited. They are getting their teams set up. So who do you think we'll see run first?
Well, Reggie wants to win, so he's probably going to lead with either Mole Knight or Fight, and I think he feels slightly more confident in his Mole Knight, so probably Mole Knight.
That makes sense.
And from
Likewise,
Jay's side, I think Luciya.
yeah, we're thinking the same thing. Jay's strongest character, the character with which he conquered worlds, defeating even Mei Lian, regarded as the strongest unbanned character at that time, is Luciya. So we might well see these two champion characters on these two talented players' teams face off, but we'll find out shortly. Alright, someone says, I'm coming out a bit quiet. Is this better, Ashlyn? I tried to adjust my mic.
And how's my audio level? There isn't much I can do,
I can
but
turn them up on my end, so.
yeah. We made a promise to Jay and Reggie to roast them super hard if they make any dumb plays. So,
Indeed we did.
oh, interesting. So Reggie is leading Mole Knight, but Jay decides to mix it up and play Remiliss. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I know why this is. I actually was talking to Jay,
Mm-hmm.
and he said to me, and I forgot about this until just now, that he thinks that Mole Knight, the general shape of card that Mole Knight has the most trouble answering is sweep with +0 to 1 range.
Oh, well, I happen to know somebody who can throw that card several times per rotation.
Yes, yes.
And here she is. Orange-haired bombshell. The nuclear weapon Remiliss. Actually a Gestalt, a weapon created to kill the gods in the setting of 7th Cross. And it sure shows, because if any character is a god slayer, it's her. She is incredibly powerful, but very difficult to pilot. Alright, Mole Knight is taking first, Remiliss will take second. For a 7th Cross character, this isn't a huge detriment, because they're able to take a deeper mulligan to hunt for those early transformations. However, as second player, that also means you're vulnerable to a turn 1 parry, which can knock exactly that kind of value out of your hands. Remiliss, however, much like Minato, can recur cards from her discard pile, although she does it a bit more directly than Minato, meaning even if she is disrupted, she can get those options back. In other words, a lot of technical options are available. Let's see what happens. Turn 1 parry, probably Toxic Tendrils, and it misses. It's
I am
Remiliss's
assuming
hand.
that Jay mulled away the tendrils for this exact reason.
Almost certainly. Oh,
This also pretty clearly telegraphs that Reggie is going straight for the throat because he is not one to normally do a turn 1 parry type play.
this is true. But it has the transformation Radiation on it, which is Remiliss's most valuable transformation. It's intensely matchup warping and extremely powerful, one of the best transformations in the whole game, actually. So trying to get rid of it early and prevent her from being able to easily transform that card is an intense early value play. Alright, Mole Knight's taking the Mole Prep, affectionately known, the action whereby he places his burrow in a space at range 3 from himself, and then draws a card. He will then also draw for end of turn. Alright, so Mole Knight's effect Molly's character ability is that when he initiates a strike, he can declare that he will move to his burrow as before effect. In other words, he can gain a before effect, like the before on assault or dive, giving him movement, which lets him move to his burrow. So, even though he is currently at range 4, he can strike with something that hits at range 1 as long as he's initiating. He will telegraph it, since he has to tell his opponent that's what he's doing, but often there's just nothing you can do about it.
That is very true. Remiliss' hand is still very scary, but generally, traditionally, the early mole turns are going to be burrow cross, stuff like that. So this hand actually does kind of form a little mix-up where if you try to go for the evasive options, Irradiate answers them, but if you go for the less evasive options, Ground Zero answers them. So that'll be interesting to see how Reggie tries to handle that.
There is also the option of Diving Dig, affectionately nicknamed Butt Butt in the Exceed community. This is a 1/5/3 ignore guard, so it beats anything defensive, and it's slow enough to dodge most faster moves. We have an unsuccessful reading. That is Focus Dive Assault, Headbutt, Belly Slide, Cave In.
Reading Sweep, so he didn't want him to move. This is probably like Irradiate, which unfortunately will lose if that is the call. And
a non-EX Irradiate will lose to Dive.
Plays Focus, interesting. I guess just to take less damage from the Irradiate, which did end up getting played. Unfortunately, the non-committal play there will end up getting punished somewhat severely because having a transformation, especially one of the two core pieces of Remiliss' engine live so soon, will certainly give a lot of value through the rest of the game.
Agreed. Alright, so Mole Knight striking from Burrow with one of those cards. Well, he has live mix-up here. Just about the only thing he isn't likely to play... Well, actually, he could still play Dive if he wanted to. It wouldn't get any value out of the Burrow, per se, but it hits. Pretty much that whole hand hits, actually.
Kind of feels like Headbutt. It's unfortunate to have to use a Headbutt this early, but I think it's the thing that covers the most options.
It's a pretty reliable source of gauge. It is Headbutt. Validate.
And Remiliss plays a sweep off the top of her deck, so Mole Knight will be forced to retreat instead of gaining advantage.
Which is not his preferred position, but he does get a gauge without taking any damage in return. So Headbutt is a great example of a card that honestly deserves its force cost. This is a force special. They're introduced in Season 4. It's a card that when you reveal it, requires you to pay a force to validate it, much like an Ultra does with Gauge. And by the same token, if you Wild Swing it, you can invalidate it, just like with a Wild Swing Ultra. Headbutt is a card that is amazingly safe and extremely versatile. With a reliable stat line, and especially because of how Mole Knight's Burrow works, it tends to never lose to anything. It is absolutely worth the force cost to play it.
Mole Knight moves his Burrow, and then Remiliss fires back with a Defend.
Alright, Mole Knight threatening, as usual, to jump in on the Burrow and hit at range 1 with anything he wants. And he will be initiating with the Burrow. And there is the cross.
Yeah, it is the cross that I mentioned earlier. Mole Knight loves to get his safe gauge just so he can exceed. His exceed is absolutely insane. Remiliss cares a lot about gauge, so it needs to be fixed.
Discord order.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so this is a jump in, jump out move where he pops up in the Burrow, pokes you, and then runs away, fleeing a counter attack. Alright, that's 2 gauge out of the 4 that he needs to exceed and activate his much more powerful exceed mode. Remiliss is 1 transformation out of 3, but in particular, one of the 2 major transformations in her kit. Both characters are kind of racing to become godlike. Remiliss moves forward, standing on that Burrow.
Normally that's kind of... It's not bad, but it's only really good if you can do it in addition to doing something else on your turn. But as Remiliss in this position, that actually is pretty good because 4 is significantly worse for her than 3 is.
Yes, at range 3, the range 3 mix-up is live, but she can diffuse it by playing an EX Assault and EX Dive, depending. Normally, the range 3 mix-up is comprised of Assault, Spike, Sweep, where Sweep beats Assault, Spike beats Sweep, and Assault beats Spike. But Remiliss, because of her character ability, can make any attack EX if she's willing to invest the resources. Because of this, she can decide, I'm just going to play something that beats all of those, as long as she has the options at hand and is willing to spend the cost.
Luckily, Remiliss does actually have a fairly large hand now, so there's a good chance that she'll be able to afford the 3 force cost to activate her character ability.
This is true, which means the most important part of Remiliss' play here is making sure that she doesn't whiff a payout on which she's heavily invested.
Light, are we going to see the tech volley that tends to follow?
We'll find out momentarily. We know one tech is down on Moon Knight's side, because that is a dive on top of his discard. So, like most 7th cross characters, Remiliss leans into her normals for her boost game. She doesn't have a lot to threaten outside of that in terms of stat boosts.
Moon Knight just running away.
Backstepping threat, telegraphing that block push, and basically preventing Remiliss from doing anything to him at this range. If she moves forward, then she'll turn the burrow on, letting him attack her from the burrow. If she doesn't move, then he can play block push and she can't hit with anything. However, this is double-sided because even though he can basically safely poke at her from range here, he is buying her time to dig through that deck, look for those transformations.
I do think if I was Remiliss, I would want to take center here, especially if I have cross in hand, because fundamentally that means that it makes the burrow the same as initiating from where you are.
That's true. It would be a range 3 initiation either way if you did that.
And center is where Remiliss loves to stand anyways.
Oh, there we go. Yep, this is true. Remiliss is a nuclear weapon who wants to sit in the center of the stage, one of the center 3 spaces in particular, but especially the center space, and then bomb the entire board with massive damage. This will be especially pronounced once she has radiation transforms, but it all depends on how quickly she can guarantee the transformation for whether or not she'll gain that power budget early or late. Looks like Moon Knight is initiating. No indication of burrow. This makes sense. There's no particular reason to use it when you are gaining the same range from your current position. It also means that
there's some like weird tech that can be used with it, but that's like not often useful. Playing a Natty X, interesting.
Yep. Like notably, he could have played Assault and still cut across here. Oh, that's gonna get stuffed. So he played a Cave-In, hoping to trap that defensive EX Assault, which is, as I said, one of the ways that Remiliss turns off mix-ups. He will not be successful because she responded with a natural EX Ground Zero, which hits at range 3, dealing 5 damage over his, I believe that's 3 armor, excuse me, to take 2 life points off and stun him. It's also Transform Ground Zero, which is a useful transformation, but again, not the most valuable one in her kit. It does, however, let her dig through her deck faster to find that 3rd transformation and become godlike. Moon Knight repositions the burrow.
This is a better position for it than where it was.
I would say that the game was looking very, very even, maybe even Moon Knight favored up until that whiffed Ultra, but the resource cost to Moon Knight of that whiff is going to be extremely severe.
That is very true. I think it is slowly turning Remiliss favored, although firing off all these Nat EX attacks is surprising, to say the least.
With access to Power Cycle, she will be able to reload more quickly than normal. So the riskiest play that she can make here would be the natural EX Toxic Tendrils. It loses to Headbutt and Cross. Excuse me, and if it loses, then she'll have both copies of Tendrils in her discard pile.
And to be frank, if this is Natty X Tendrils, it should have been transformed, not played.
That's true. Or at least that would be the way to guarantee the transformation. Trying to gain extra value out of the attack is cheeky, but it can sometimes pay off. I think the likelier play is the EX Assaults to get to range 1, her favorite range, at which point she can perhaps boost Reclamation to retrieve the other Ground Zero from her discard pile.
That would be spicy, especially because it's automatically EX.
Caustic Fin, well that is Assault shaped, so she's going to close 2, on hit draw 2, discard 1.
That is a heavy investment, but if there's an Aftershock in that hand, not too bad.
Correcting the discard order. The extra copy of the EX is discarded on reveal, of course, and then the hit effect occurs in the middle of the strike.
And
So,
Aftershock, for the viewers, is the boost on consumption. It says, like, take a card from your gauge and add all copies from your discard to your hand. So you can grab an EX from your gauge, essentially. Reclamation, the boost on Caustic Vent, is super valuable, but if you can play the nat EX of it and then return it with Aftershock, you're not super losing value on it.
this is true. Reclamation is one of the best special boosts in the game simply because it provides infinite utility. It is as good as any other boost because it can return any other boost to your hands. And it can even return normals. So it often, because it can return reading or a card with a transformation, it gains value above and beyond what you might even guess. Alright, so we have initiating from Burrow into Spike. Oh,
that's unfortunate.
well, Remiliss eats the Spike, takes 5 damage. Mole Knight gains a pretty hefty life lead off that. So he was up a couple points, now he's up by 7. And he's at 2 gauge again out of his 4, trying to rebuild from the deficit of that Whiffed Ultra. Alright, Remiliss has, your next attack is considered EX. This is the boost on nuclear option titled Initiate Launch. It means that instead of paying 3 force, she just has this one boost in play. Alright, we have Light Tech.
The classic volley.
And Tech of nuclear option. That is Mole Knight's second dive. He is out of dives until reshuffle. Ooh.
That does mean that Remiliss will be able to bully Mole Knight with boosts, like the other copy of Initiate Launch, and the other sweeps already been used. So Initiate Launch is the primary one that we'll be seeing a good amount of, presumably.
Because the after effect of this boost lets Remiliss return it to her hands by spending a gauge, and it tends to allow her to land a hit, so she gains a gauge during the next strike. Once this boost comes down, it will almost always remain in circulation for the entire rest of the game. Mole Knight backs up by spending force, trying to get out of close range against the pretty threatening Remiliss. The only threat that she is presenting at this range is Irradiates, which I believe actually trades with Block Push.
That it
does.
does. Because Block Push has 6 guard.
Yep, an EX Irradiate would deal exactly 6 damage and then take 4 in return. Which, you know, it's a positive trade for Remiliss, but she can't really afford to make a lot of trades like that when she's down 7 life. So, she needs to decide what to do about the threat that Mole Knight is presenting, especially because if she doesn't initiate, Mole Knight can initiate using the Burrow, which dramatically expands his available options.
I think in this instance, moving to range 3 onto the Burrow is pretty good. Similar to before, Remiliss doesn't really want to be at range 5, and you're also, at the same time, diffusing that Burrow threat.
B-Train asks, does Remy have a dive in the mix? I am unsure if Remiliss has a copy of dive remaining. I guess I can find out. She does not. Oh! Well, EX Transform Tendrils. Remy is now fully online. She finally got Radiation in play. Her EX attacks have plus 1 range. Mole Knight, not one to waste time, is going to take that tempo advantage of striking from Burrow. With Headbutts, which will cost him a force, but he'll be able to gain advantage.
Jay does have a decision to be made before Headbutt starts. Okay, okay. There we go, perfect. That's important.
He chose to spend a gauge to return that boost to his hands, which means he has that available, which is a net force benefit, and also is just generally a useful card. Mole Knight's stunning with Headbutts is also going to choose to use that hit effect to advance and gain advantage, and then the follow-up turn, he will place the Burrow at range 3, draw for end of turn. This is one of the standard Mole Knight combos, is to run Headbutt into advantage into place the Burrow. Since you lose 2 cards playing Headbutt, then you gain 2 cards placing the Burrow. Range 2 from Remiliss is basically the same as range 1, now that she has Radiation in play. The game is actually looking grim for Mole Knight if Remiliss is extremely careful, but any mistake could spell her downfall, because she doesn't have a lot of life to work with. Taking the reshuffle action, and Mole Knight strikes from Burrow.
That's an interesting decision, because range 1 is...
I feel like EX Grasp stuffs everything in the world here.
Yeah.
It's not... Oh, actually, no, he could be playing Belly Slide. He had a Belly Slide earlier, and I don't think we ever saw it drop. There it is.
Just went for the block.
Yep. Chooses to move onto the burrow and then advance one. So he has two before effects. He can order them either way he chooses. So he decides to move to the burrow first and then advance one. Alright.
I'm kind of curious if Jay was thinking of going for a cheeky EX spike play there.
An EX something. My read would have been on the EX grasp until he realized the same thing that I did. Of course, we don't know if he has the grasp. We know he had a spike. That makes it Remiliss' turn. So Mole Knight is almost certainly about to exceed, which significantly amps up his power level. Remiliss needs to make sure that she doesn't waste time bringing him to his knees before he simply overwhelms her with raw power.
Luckily, Remiliss, more than most characters, is fairly well equipped to deal with characters throwing stats at her.
I would definitely agree. The chief problem in the matchup for her is in the form of Butt, because it has Ignore Guard at speed 3, which means if Mole Knight initiates with it, it actually even beats Napalm Stream, a card that normally just doesn't lose to anything.
It is a very rude card. Mole going for the Exceed, as was expected.
Mm-hmm.
Remiliss prepping last turn, which I find kind of interesting, but I guess just building up some resources into what we know is going to be a lower tempo turn for Mole Knight is not too terrible.
It's pretty reasonable. Additionally, the fact that she didn't change cards means the information available to Mole Knight about what she has is kept to a minimum. It'd be very common to see a Remiliss change cards 1 here to draw 3 cards because of the transformation on Ground Zero, Power Cycle. But even dropping 1 card betrays information about what's left in her hands, which is dangerous into an opponent as experienced as Reggie.
That is very true.
Probably going to see the Initiate launch here. It looks like Remiliss is considering boosting.
Initiate launch would be pretty good here.
Mm-hmm. So, Remiliss does have one saving grace here, although it is a bit awkward because it plays at odds with her usual playstyle. Remiliss is often played as a defensive character because the ability to EX on defense is extremely potent. It lets you take the opponent by surprise with above curve attacks, making all of your moves safer than they normally would be. However, Mole Knight has no ability if you initiate into him. His ability only works when he initiates, which means if Remiliss can be offensive, she can take advantage of this and try to outstat him. 10 life is a lot to make up, though.
The Stone Wall, which is basically like an upgraded Defend. Ooh,
oh, things just got real.
For Yellow Death, so damage numbers are going to skyrocket.
Yes, Remiliss is now threatening an automatic EX Ground Zero, which would hit for 14. A Napalm Stream, which would hit for 10. Or, well, an EX Grasp that hurls Mole Knight to the edge of the arena. Although, that was not a likely play because she can't stun him with the EX Grasp. He has 2 armor, 2 guard at minimum. 3 armor, 3 guard at minimum, excuse me. He has played an EX attack.
Yeah, Mole Knight playing an EX and declaring Burrow, so +3 power is a lot of power. But luckily, this EX is probably able to be narrowed down to just a small handful of options, and a small handful of options is exactly what Remiliss wants to see.
Mm-hmm. Opponent is checking those discards now. I'll give the audience the benefit of the same review. I'm not going to go down the line, though. Yeah, to me, the major factor here is simply what does Remiliss have available, not what does Mole Knight have available. Because she can blow him up big time, as long as she doesn't get completely stuffed by whatever this is. With 3-3 on defense, I would say she's in danger, but she can't lose the game this strike.
That is true.
And she can close the game in only 2 hits, as long as she has the right cards. We'll see what happens.
I think the correct call here could bring those life totals very close together, which is awkward for Mole Knight, but also could be very awkward for Remiliss if the call or answer is just simply not available.
Tend to agree. Of course, if it's not in Remiliss's hands, she should just Wild Swing and hang on to that hand for when she needs it. She's a
That is
very
very
good
true.
chance, whatever this is, she's a very good chance of being faster and or not being stunned. Because if she's slow, she'll have the EX defenses, and if she's fast, well, she'll be even faster.
Playing a focus from hand.
Oh,
Focus.
no.
No.
That's the worst
That's
case.
bad.
So, Mole Knight will slam down on the earth, shattering it with the force of his mighty posterior, dealing 8 damage minus 3 armor for a total of 5.
Okay, there we go. Discards are being fixed.
Yes. Um, yeah, that's brutal. I would actually go so far as to say it might be decisive. Remiliss can recover from this, but it's extremely difficult. She basically can't lose another turn. She'll have to initiate, and she has to have the right cards right now. Looks like she is returning that focus, hoping to play Tinky instead of being aggressive. Not sure that's the right call here. I would be changing cards aggressively to look for Ground Zero, Napalm Stream, and even Irradiate. Just things I can use to threaten for massive damage. Right, she does boost the other Initiate launch, meaning whatever she throws is EX. However,
I'm still a touch surprised that she didn't recover the other one with the Reclamation, going for the focus instead.
yeah, if she had reclaimed the other one, she could have then struck with a natural EX nuclear option, which would gain her a ton of resources and a ton of automatic EXs, which is just the sort of thing she needs to turn the tide here. Alright, she's initiating into Mole Knight. It is an EX focus. That is range 1 to 3, power 5. She'll draw 3 cards with her after effects. Technically, the opponent should choose first how much force to spend, but it doesn't affect much either way.
Yeah. The other decision will affect things, so it should not be resolved until after the block has been paid for.
Mm-hmm. Alright, opponent spends 2 force, will take no damage. And evidently did spin the gauge to return nuclear option to Remiliss's hand. Alright, that was initiated by Remiliss.
That strike could be good, but I don't think that strike was good at this exact moment.
I think that draw made it worthwhile. Especially with Mole Knight only boosting and not initiating. I'm actually very surprised he didn't just initiate with the grass there. I think Remiliss should absolutely just initiate again. She needs to stay on the offensive in order to not fall even farther behind.
I would completely agree.
Alright, so...
One card. So the EX threats here would be...
focus,
basically
tendrils...
Ground Zero focus.
Yeah, it's any of her transformations or focus. With the opponent's permission, it looks like Reggie checked his deck and then shuffled it afterwards. Not a thing that happens in the rules, but...
a Wild Swing?
Oh.
The other focus. That's really funny.
Well, it is the focus. Okay, so Assault comes in, hits for 6 minus 3 is 3, excuse me. Which is unfortunate. Remiliss is a lot safer at 6 life than at 5, thanks to the effect on Napalm Stream. She does, however, draw 3 more cards, and deal 4 damage after armor. 5 damage, excuse me, because there's no armor on Assaults. Don't know what I'm thinking. I'm just assuming everybody has EX attacks, I guess. Mole Knight has a turn. It looks like he is setting up an EX from hands, probably from Burrow for the extra +2. That is extremely dangerous. Well, what EXs remain here?
That is something that should definitely be checked by Jay, because this is probably literally face up.
Yeah, I know what this is. It is... I'm not going to hover on it, actually. I just realized I can't give it away. But my hand is visible. It's a Speed 7 special.
Oh, that... Wait, why?
It's faster than EX Dive. Or sorry, faster than EX Grasp. And it's 6 power. Alright, yeah. Remiliss will take no damage, spending all of her gauge. Mole Knight ends up at range 2. His hand is now known, but Remiliss has no foci remaining, so there's no reading threat here. Looks like Grasp and Cave-In are the remaining cards. Well, she can. I mean, he can still threaten to run a Burrow Grasp on his next turn if Remiliss doesn't reposition.
Though if she has ground zero in hand, she can slam him for a bunch of damage right now.
Mm-hmm. It's not the maximum amount of damage, but it sure would be a lot. Let's see. Does ground zero lose to anything?
A wild swing?
I would actually argue, yeah, it loses to a wild swing in the form of cross or headbutt. Headbutt it doesn't lose cleanly. Well, Knight would push one and retreat one and then take 5 damage. If my math is correct. She's initiating. Well, Knight is wild swinging. See if he gets that cross. It is block, which is actually also pretty good for him. So she pulls 1 and then gains plus 6 power for a total of 11. But he has the force to be able to tank this.
Though dumping everything on this is painful.
It is indeed. If she has a reclamation, how much force is that? Enough, evidently. Yeah. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 force for a total of 12. Yep, she took no damage. Now he took no damage. Now he's going to change cards 3, drawing a total of 4 cards. Alright, Remiliss needs to get that ground zero back, although right now she is overdrawn. Her hand size is 7 and she's at 9 cards. This means if she ends her turn without striking, she'll have to discard, which hemorrhages information and potential value. Note that as long as she continues striking, she will not have to discard. This is because hand size is only checked after you draw at the end of your turn. So, what's the play? She needs to get some damage in, and she needs to see that ground zero again.
Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking what the best way to accomplish that goal is, especially with the amount of life she has available to her.
Mm-hmm. I think it would make sense to take a move action to hop over Mole and take center, spinning that ground zero from Gage and a couple cards from hands. Then you don't lose as much value from the overdraw, and you're at range 2, which is, often as good as range 1. It also puts the ground zero in discard, so you can reclamation it in the next turn.
Going for an initiate. Let's see if it pays off.
Initiating ends... Non-EX. That could be Tendrils. Oh, EX Cross. Oh, regular Cross. That is...
painful.
Extremely painful.
Probably going to spell the end of the game.
Yep. Remiliss probably trying to bait the cross. Unfortunately, baits it a little too well. Mole Knight prepares, which buys her a little more time. She can still potentially close this if she has an Irradiate in hands. Well, there's Irradiate, so that's an invalid cave-in. Now, he's out of crosses, so he can't actually dodge this. His die will lose the speed tie and take 10. That puts him at 8 life. But, if she's out of blocks, which I think she is... No, she is. Then all he needs is to be faster for 1 strike, and he'll be able to seal the game with lethal.
Though, he is not... He's kind of wanting for fast options at this point, so an EX Assault is a decent play, just to play the fastest thing you can.
I would tend to agree. I think the fast... But he could... So, the worst case for Remiliss is he drew a grasp and he's playing it, but I think there's literally nothing you can do about it. So she should just assume that's not the case. I think actually if she can play Tendrils, an automatic EX Tendrils is fine.
Yeah.
EX Assault or auto EX Tendrils, either way. We'll see what happens. Her options are pretty thin.
Remiliss still deliberating between a couple options, choosing dive.
Oh, it was headbutt.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing in the world matters because you couldn't contest.
Yes,
that,
the headbutt was
option.
literally unbeatable. Well, good game. Fairly fought and fairly won. So Mole Knight takes a win over Remiliss. Let me update the overlay while the players make their next selection.
I think the next matchup is going to be Fight versus Luciya.
That makes sense. So we, Blue and I know the players pretty well, and we know that Beheaded is probably Jay's least comfortable character, and Ryu is probably Reggie's least comfortable character. So Jay is likely to switch to his champion Luciya, And then Reggie, having no access to Mole Knight because Mole Knight just won a game, is probably going to switch to fights. He's more comfortable with the two.
I think also, in terms of matchup considerations, Luciya into fight is good for Jay, so it is what he would want to switch into, expecting the fight pick. And also, actually, Luciya is good into Ryu, too, so...
You know, it does occur to me, I say all that, but in truth, I haven't seen Reggie play much Ryu. I think of him as maining Fight and Mole because those are the characters he played during Season 4 playtesting when I was most active playing into him. So it may... I may actually be underestimating how much he's worked on his Ryu. But in my experience fighting him, he has played a lot of Fight.
I think his Ryu is somewhat unrefined.
Yeah, Ryu is a big dumb character who has big numbers. You can be pretty unrefined with Ryu and still get on just fine.
I'm not sure a random unrefined Ryu will be good enough, but I know that Jay also really dislikes fighting any Ryu.
This is true. He has stated, he has expressed numerous times that he does not care for fighting into Ryu. He doesn't find it interesting. He finds Ryu kind of boring, just as kind of a stats monster. Let's see. So, would you rather fight 10 Ryu-sized fights or 1 fight-sized Ryu?
I don't know how big a fight is.
I think he's like, I don't know, 24 by 60 pixels, give or take.
So a human-sized fight or a bunch of teeny Ryus?
Sure, I think I said it backwards, but we'll go with that. You know, actually, I think it might be 16-bit, so he's probably larger than that. Oh, well. 16-bit Ryu. Small army of 16-bit Ryus. Oh, selections have been made. I should probably show the people on the stream.
Luciya and fight, like I called.
Yep, called it exactly. Let me update that. Alright. So Jay's answer, Luciya, is prominent in the limited meta of Luciya players because he does not lean heavily into late game payouts. He focuses instead on answering his opponent's threats, outplaying them, making sure that they can't get value out of their options, which is uniquely effective into a character like Fight, who is, amusingly, kind of like Remiliss. Fight really hates whiffing payouts. He commits very heavily to his attacks, and on a whiff, he's out a ton of resources that he really couldn't afford because his economy isn't all that good. For those, by the way, not familiar with these characters, Luciya is from 7th Cross, a proprietary world of Level 99 Games, which, so far, the characters from 7th Cross only appear in Exceed. Fight, however, is from a robot named Fights. It's an indie game available on Steam. It's kind of a Metroidvania action platformer type thing. I don't know. Throw some labels on it as far as genres go. It's fun. I recommend it. It's also pretty cheap.
It's a really cool game, and it goes on sale very often. Luciya opening with EX Transform Bug Zapper, which is interesting because this is normally the transform that people kind of don't like.
I don't value the transform very much, but I value the attack even less. So I can totally see this play because it's just to me this reads your exceed cost is reduced by 2.
I mean, we take those.
For sure. Luciya is a 7th Cross character, so she has transformations, which are effects that basically give her a permanent addition to her character ability. There are 2 ways to get a transformation in play. One is to hit with the attack. The other is to, as you just saw happen, discard 1 copy to transform the other. And once it's in play forever. Additionally, on the character card, you might see that's 2 with the minuscule minus sign next to it at the very bottom right of the character card. That means that each transformation you have in play reduces your exceed cost by 2. Please note, by the way, you can never have 2 copies of the same card in your transformation area. Fight boosts lights, making it easier for him to confirm hits, which is obviously extremely valuable given his overall character style.
This kind of says that he has the explosive shot in hand, but Luciya is unique in having an answer to it with 0 gauge.
This is true. She has access to Firefly Gunner, a potent mix-up card. It is 3-4-6-1, so that's range 3-4, power 6, speed 1. It has no printed defenses, but it says attacks at range 3 and 4 do not hit you. This means that from opening positions, she can dodge any projectile whatsoever. She has to call the mix-up correctly, of course, since playing that, and then if the opponent plays a dive, for example, means you get punched in the face and, you know, are sad. Alright, we have Explore, I think that is. Yep, Advanced Retreat 2, hit the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge. It's interesting. So Fight has a pretty explosive power budget, but one of the balancing factors is some of these effects that give him resources do so by pulling cards out of his deck, which can eliminate the number of remaining options he has. Taking out those potential options from his deck, where he'll be drawing cards and attacking, means that sometimes he can quote-unquote mill, meaning discard from his deck, even into his gauge, options that he can't afford to lose. This helps prevent him from being out of control by damaging his overall consistency as a character. Inconsistency is one of the things that keeps high-power characters like this in check. Excuse me. Let's see. A Fight's ability, by the way.
Jay doing some quick card counting, probably deliberating over a couple different options he has in hand to answer the Explore.
Yep. So Explore, moving to range 2. Range 2 is kind of vulnerable position for Luciya. It's not her favorite range. It's also not Fight's favorite range, though. This is kind of equally awkward for both of them. However, it does signal that Fight is confident he can land his next hit, because that's a pretty valuable hit effect, and he doesn't want to waste it. I was just going to mention that Fight's character ability, for those not familiar, is when you set your attack, you may spend up to 2 force for +1 power each, meaning per force spent. So if you spend 2 force, you get +2 power. Nice. To abet this character ability, he has 3 ultras instead of the regular 2, joining Dan as a unique distribution character, where instead of 5 specials, he has 4. Luciya boost for speed, making it that much harder for Fight to confirm hits.
That feels like a pretty good play here.
I'm always a fan of Light. Sweep is good for trading, but Light is good for winning strikes cleanly. Way of the Warrior. So Way of the Warrior is a boost on Ryu, but it says +2 power, +2 speed. So whenever we see somebody construct +2 power, +2 speed, folks will often affectionately refer to it as Way of the Warrior entering play. Man, Ryu has good boosts.
That he does.
Right.
Oftentimes, in a boost war like this, boosting power after you boost speed is kind of a force multiplier, because now whatever it is that you're playing gets much more difficult to answer.
And that Light is going to get teched after a defender's play, and Luciya preps just to catch up in the sequence of action. So now Luciya has power, but not speed, but it is her turn. But Fight has defend in play, making him harder to stun.
Luciya notably has access to Preemptive, which is +2 speed, now strike. It is on Skies of Flame, so if she really wanted to have +2 speed going into this strike, she totally could.
She could have
it.
She
also has an extra copy of Light, quote-unquote, on Firefly Gunner, Whirlwind. It is actually a +3 speed boost, so it makes it even harder to contest.
However, it's not actually good in boost wars except to end them, because if you try to leave it in play for a turn, it will add itself to gauge. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, the defensive...
He keeps baiting out those crosses too well.
Yep, so the defending EX cross is going to stuff the offensive cross for 6 power, because Fight spent for +2 power.
And Fight actually got a pretty good mill. He got an Ultra into gauge along with Focus, which kind of sucks, but like Focus... Fight would rather play something that is more guaranteed to hit. So Focus would be more valued for the reading boost.
It's also a reasonable option in close range, since unlike Akuma, when Fight gets a bunch of power in his attack, he doesn't give the opponent any extra power in return.
That is very true.
Alright, that looks like a +2 power EX attack. That is almost certainly explosive, but it could be...
At range 5, Firefly Gunner cannot dodge, so that just gets stuffed for 6.
That is 6 damage, and on hit it adds the top of his discard pile to his gauge, helping him restock some of those expended resources. This is not looking good for Luciya. That defensive EX cross, so when Fight moved into range 2, telegraphing that he was ready for a range 2 fight, I did not anticipate that he was quite that ready.
Fight, gunning that Exceed, nice and early, which is always very, very scary.
Mm-hmm.
He also has some pretty good boosts down already, so this could be a very scary exceed strike.
It's good. I think he's going to boost the Explore to move to range 3. Yep. And then he gets to put another boost into play. And it'll be the +1 speed with another advanced 1, move max range 2. Well, with both crosses down, it is surprising that he moves to range 2, but the +1 speed helps a lot with that.
I guess he probably wants to... He would rather be at range 2 than have to deal with the auto dodge.
That makes sense. Someone in the chat's pointed out, for those wondering at home, Fight is using a strange set of normals. So you might notice that he has used the normals from his own deck, the Robot Named Fight deck, but he has a focus over there that is clearly not from his own deck. That's because Fight's focus unfortunately has a misprint on it, which made its way into Tabletop Simulator as well as the real life kit. Focus is printed with 4 guard, but the correct number is 5, so we've subbed that out for ease of use in play.
There was a time in the TTS module where the SF block was subbed out for a similar but actually more severe misprint.
Yes, the version of the SF block that initially made it into the module had a massively stronger version of parry on it, which was, I believe it was name a card the opponent must reveal their hand and discard all copies of it.
Yep.
It's horrifying. Alright, looks like Luciya is boosting Chain Trap, which prevents the opponent from moving. Fight will spend
Fight
the...
opts to discard a copy of Railgun to tech that into Luciya's gauge.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the effect in this boost gives the opponent the option to add it to Luciya's gauge by spending 2 force as an action, so it does pass his turn. This makes perfect sense because Luciya is telegraphing that she has a Firefly Gunner waiting to guarantee that she wins the strike at range 3, meaning if Chain Trap is up, Fight simply cannot win the strike by any means. Getting rid of it is a must. Somebody in chat's asking if Ultra Parry is the name of the boost. It is. It's on Chun-Li. It's much weaker than the effect we described, though. It's a 2-force Ultra boost, which says the opponent must either discard 3 normals or reveal their hand and discard all normals. Things are not looking super good for Luciya here. She's dropped both downbursts, so she doesn't have an above curve range 3 option anymore, other than Ride the Lightning. She's dropped 1 Ride the Lightning and 1 Skies of Flame, so she's running thin on Ultras. She lost her cross, well, one of her crosses, in the earlier exchange. She now is at least up 1 speed. But Fight will boost stun immunity.
This is going to be a very silly strike.
It is indeed. Interesting about stun immunity, though, is it doesn't help if you whiff. So Luciya is still threatening to dodge an attack with Ride the Lightning, or even with Skies of Flame if she's desperate. Since Skies of Flame wouldn't hit, but it might let her dodge. Or she could just play it out.
What I would absolutely love to see here from Fight is like something to call out the Ride the Lightning in particular. Something like Dive.
Mm-hmm. Dive hits if she doesn't move, and it also hits the Ride the Lightning. So it would be a pretty sensible play, honestly. Although I know that I think he's teched at least one thing. I guess I can just check. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, his dive also has a misprint on it. That's just a word missing. So if you're wondering why he has the Season 2 dive, his dive says, I believe it says, before Advance 3, if you moved the opponent, instead of if you move past the opponent.
If you move to the opponent, which is a very, very different meaning than move past the opponent.
Yes, since he has no way of moving the opponent with dive. So clearly just a typo there.
Yeah, I mean, only weird characters like Plague Knight can move the opponent with their dive.
He sure can. Plague Knight. Season 4 has some great jank in it. So does Season 2, for that matter. So I've been talking about Ride the Lightning. Let me mouse over this card real quick. It is crazy fast. Speed 8. Excuse me, with before close 4 and after advance 4. At only 2 gauge. It's very efficient, but it only has 1 printed power. Now, thanks
Despite
to
being ludicrously above curve, it's actually somewhat mediocre.
Mm-hmm. It's a significant resource cost. It's really just used as an evasive option. It's not very good at doing damage, which is something that Luciya already struggles with. I believe it is Luciya's turn.
Fight fight boosted stun immunity and priority pass back to Luciya? I do believe so.
Mm-hmm. Fight is looking pretty scary with these 3 boosts in play. Oh.
Oh?
Move action?
To range 3, huh?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then because of her carriage ability, the top card of her discard adds to her gauge, which is that Ride the Lightning. Looks like we have a
Spending
+3
3?
power and strike. Alright, if Luciya can make this whiff, she's back in the game.
And if she can't, then
She's toast.
R.I.P. Skies of Flame.
That will be faster. She is speed 7 over his speed 6 assault. Whew. Alright, so she spends 3 gauge to validate.
Reggie kindly reminding that he has stun immunity, and thus Luciya will have to back up instead of crossing over. So this will be an expensive dodge, but ultimately in her favor.
Definitely. Yep, she can move to any space with her after effects. She decides to retreat 2 spaces, so that she'll end up with range 3 after fight closes. Fights discards his boost. Note that you can discard these in any order, since they all discard at the same time. He is optimizing his discard by placing his ultras on top, so that any effects he has which allow him to pull the top of his discard into his gauge will retrieve cards worth 2 force instead of 1. This is an optimization trick that characters like Fight and Remiliss make good use of. Alright. That was good for Luciya, and it's now her turn. She can come back from this. Fight has expended his resources and has no way to reload. Luciya has also spent a lot, but she's up. She just needs to win mix-ups. So if I were Luciya, I think I would be trying to play the card that wins the strike.
The card that wins is pretty good, and it looks like the card that wins may have been the top of the deck, so obviously Luciya should have wild swung last turn.
Evidently, and yes, that will win the strike. She pulls 2 and then advances 4, getting clean out of range of that sweep, dealing a total of 5 damage. That's how Luciya likes to win strikes, cleanly. Alright, additionally, she now has her reload available. She qualifies for her Exceed with 2 transformations and plenty of gauge. Technically, she already qualified for it, but it's really not efficient to do it if you have only 1 transformation in play unless you have to. She is indeed going to take that option, so she spends the 1 gauge that is now her Exceed cost, because she has 2 transforms, and then her Exceed says, when you Exceed, add your hand to your gauge and draw 5 cards. So she does just that. Then she draws 1 for the end of her turn. Alright, so ability is different now.
The reload is good to give her some a quick tempo injection, although Thunderbird also uses the resources much more rapidly without gaining them back quite like Luciya can, so she burns out quite quickly if you don't manage your resources effectively.
She can, but if she plays cautiously, then this will definitely have been worth it. So she no longer gains gauge for moving over the opponent or deals non-lethal damage. Instead, her ability is when she spends cards from her gauge, whatever she spends them on, they enter play as face-down continuous boosts that each provide her +1 power. So if she's spending gauge for an ultra, if she spends force to move, but she spends it from her gauge, if she spends force to activate some sort of effect, all that stuff can give her extra power. Fight, taking that reshuffle action.
Probably a good idea, especially right now where the biggest threats from Luciya are all down since she has 0 ultras left.
She'll be looking for that reshuffle in the relatively near future as well, I think, but she's going to need to get those. Well, ideally, she will get those ultras into play some other way so that she can pick them up after her reshuffle. Interesting. Yeah, there's some things that we haven't seen drop yet. Luciya hasn't dropped any assaults, so she's likely to have an EX assault either on tap or on deck, so to speak.
That's pretty threatening.
We also haven't seen any copies of Talon Sweep, so she'll likely EX transform that in the very near future. Or
That
get into melee and, just attack with it.
that transform is exponentially more valuable when you're exceeded.
This is very true. Let me pull that up. Da-da-da. So Talon Sweep is a range 1 attack. It only hits at range 1, please note, but it does evade with that hit effect afterwards. And the transformation has, when you set your attack, you may spend 1 force. Now keep in mind, if Thunderbird spins up from Gauge, it gives her an extra power. And then if you spend the force for this transformation, both players have +1 power. In other words, it gives Luciya +2 power, and it gives the opponent +1 power. This is a deceptively asymmetrical effect.
And as we know from Akuma, even giving both players +2 is still perfectly acceptable if you're confident you can win the strike clean.
Right. If you can go first and stun them, then you don't need to worry about how much power they have. Alright, so Fight is at 4 cards in hands. He's fresh off a reshuffle. Depending on what it was that he decided to retain, he may want to change cards to dig into that fresh deck. Continue preparing to build up. Oh, wait. It's her turn. Okay. So, let me try that again. So Fight has 4 cards in hand and is off a fresh deck and a reshuffle, etc., etc. Oh, it looks like he's going to War. Did that slightly out of order. Opponent seemed to find it acceptable. So he boosts for stun immunity, now advance 1. Interesting. So Thunderbird's dives are down, otherwise she would be threatening a very face-up dive here, since her dive would be unbeatable. Bump the switch on my mic, sorry. Let's see, she can still do a lot of nasty things here. The question is, can she win this cleanly with stun immunity in play? It's pretty easy to be risky here.
No UA shenanigans it looks like right now, so...
Yeah, she does have access to that transformation that says when you initiate a strike you may spend 2 force to move 1, but she does not appear to be using it. Notably, if she does that by spending Gauge, once again, it means she can get +1 or +2 power depending on how many cards from Gauge she spends.
With +3 speed, a lot of things are pretty free right now.
I'm trying to think of what's free even in the context of that stun immunity, though.
Yeah. I think we're probably going to see a trade, but...
Oh, +2 power on that.
Oh!
Oh, she had a dive. I miscounted. That's pretty costly.
I had assumed your count was right, because why would you move to range 3 into a +3 speed?
Yeah, it seems kind of suicidal, and it was. She managed to win that strike clean. And that also, it makes perfect sense that she didn't move 1, because range 3 is exactly where she needed to be to land that guaranteed dive. So now, if she has
makes me kind of surprised that Fight didn't back up, especially because he had an explosive shot in hand.
Yeah, I think that probably would have been the more reliable play. Let's see. Actually, at this point, given that he invested +2 on that and he got hit for 5, and it put her at range 1 with both copies of Talon Sweep up, that may prove an extremely costly mistake.
That is very true.
Alright, let's see. We have a force expenditure of 2, 4... Looks like a move action.
Yeah, he's counting out spaces.
One of the folks in chat points out, the problem is that Luciya has become a being of pure thunder, and Fight is only skilled in fighting meat and flesh. I mean, that's true. In a robot named Fights, his enemies are the meatlings.
It's a really great name for an enemy.
Along with the Mega Beast. Alright, we have a move action from Luciya, spending a total of 5 force. That gives her +3 power on whatever her next attack is, and puts her at range 4, which is a much more comfortable position for her, honestly. Fight, probably going to try to parry whatever it is he's afraid of. And it wasn't in the hand, so it may well still be in that deck of 2 cards. Here's the EX Assaults. It was Firefly Gunner. Okay.
Interesting he's afraid of Firefly Gunner here, but I guess nothing else is super big as a threat.
I mean, if he doesn't have a dive available and he's relying on his projectiles, Firefly Gunner can beat them cleanly.
Yeah.
It also does a lot of damage.
Does do a lot of damage.
Alright, this is prime time for Luciya to throw a +3 or 4 or 5 power EX Assault. Yep. She's initiating by spending 2 force to move 2, and then striking with an EX attack, which, because the opponent knows that she only had 1 EX attack remaining in hand, is effectively face up. So the opponent, that is to say, Jay is not bothering to hide it.
I mean, you know, it's, what, 9 damage?
9 power, yeah. At speed 6.
It's fine. Just, play EX Focus into it. I'm pretty sure that's literally down, but you know.
Retreating bolts with +3 dodges it.
Oh man, that's expensive.
That is incredibly expensive, but I think it would absolutely be worth it if Fight had it.
You're right.
It's depressing to throw that much resource onto a whiff. Oh, no expenditure. It's Electrocharge. Yeah, that was getting stuffed one way or the other. So Fight will take
That's
9.
Probably game.
Almost certainly. Puts Luciya at range 1 with advantage. Gets all those juicy cards back in the discard pile. In case she does actually need to reshuffle, although she probably won't need to at this point. And is this the reshuffle action? So if it was me, I would actually change cards here so that I could guarantee an EX Talon Sweep, because I believe the Talon Sweep was still in the deck.
I do believe so, yes.
Looks like she has chosen to reshuffle. Fight prepares. Alright, since she doesn't have an EX Talon Sweep to threaten, this is not decided. She boosts Defend. Fight can still come back. +1 speed, now retreat 1. It's a good boost. Arachnomorph.
It is a very good boost.
A crowning achievement of brutality. It's a good card. What's this? Believe it is still Thunderbird's turn. Chooses to prepare. Risking that reading threat now. She's holding a block, and Fight, I believe, could have access to both reading and spike at this point, making that block extremely vulnerable. She's picking that hand, probably in preparation for a strike, excuse me. Not a spike. Definitely not a spike. Oh, what's this? Change cards? Change cards 4, drawing a total of 5. She kept the block.
Going for some more speed.
It's +1 speed after retreat 1. He is compounding his advantages. It's not all that good for Luciya here. Well, speaking of ending boost wars, that is +3 speed. It will get teched immediately. And rightly so.
That is also a Firefly Gunner that is gone.
Gone for good. Yeah. Fight's cards look great, especially, I really appreciate these card backs.
I enjoy the card backs.
Just gonna put that up on the screen for a while. Okay, where were we? Firefly Gunner, boosting Whirlwinds, then Tech, and then back to Thunderbird. I can see a couple valid plays here. I think that after retreat one is actually kind of a problem.
Yeah.
This looks like a boost. Yep, boosting downburst. This costs 2 force and says advance or retreat as far as possible. If you move past the opponent this way, add this to your gauge. Ooh. Alright, doubling down. Retreating. Huh.
Spicy.
So that +2 power isn't really worth much of anything at this range. She doesn't have anything that hits at range 6. Fight actually does, but if he tries to play the thing that hits at range 6, she can probably dodge it. Also, I think both copies of it are down. Let's find out.
I know at least one electro charge is down.
Yes, and the other is in play as a boost. Parries the other Firefly Gunner. Well, Firefly's gone forever.
Very committed to having Firefly not exist.
Mm-hmm. I'm very surprised at the retreat here. I'm not sure what Thunderbird is hoping to do. She knows that he can't hit at range 6, but personally I would have moved to range 1 and probably hope to swing with a focus sweep, or in the worst case, I could just play that block if he initiates.
Yeah.
Sweep at range 1 in this context is kind of annoying because it actually loses to grasp. But focus is pretty reliable. This is notably to power jump and I guess cross and retreating bolts. What? Oh. That's gotta be the block. Huh. I wonder how the players are on deck. Alright. If they go to deck, she is decking a little slower than him. Alright, so fights faster, he misses, retreats 1. Discards his boost in any order. Probably going to optimize that discard pile again, even though at this point it's not likely to matter. And Thunderbird adds her block to her gauge, discards her boosts. Power jump gets boosted, that's a good boost.
It's a very good boost.
Dash.
Move 2 if you did not move past the opponent, add this to your gauge.
Mm-hmm. Choose to move into range 5, where now both players have options.
Though, I think this favors fight this range.
I would say it does. She can threaten to kill him with a... Oh. Okay, that got interesting. So now they're at range 3. And fight has 2 gauge, which is enough to threaten his ultras. Since he has, well, 2 of his ultras, because he has notoriously cheap ultras. This is pretty intense. I'm going to take a quick look at this fight ultras. So we've seen Lightning Gun, 1 of 326, +1 power per force you spent. Flamethrower, with before +0 range for each force you spent. And Ignore Guard. It appears both copies of Flamethrower and 1 copy of Lightning Gun are still available to be threatened. There's a lot to be afraid of here.
Getting out of here.
Huh. Alright, tosses 1 Ride the Lightning to play the boost on Downburst, Chain Climb, at least I think it's called Chain Climb. Yep. Fight taking a move action to get back into close range, moves to range 2. There's 1 copy of Flamethrower down, the other still remains, as does the other copy of Lightning Gun. Thunderbird's turn. Someone in chat asks, "What's that music playing?" Oh, it's just a little tune that goes with everything.
I don't have your stream open, but I know what goes with everything, so...
I'm sure you do. Alright, Thunderbird boost light. Oh, stun immunity comes back. Someone in chat calls the range 1 spike, which I think would be a slightly questionable play here.
What are you talking about? It's the best play.
It doesn't actually beat anything, so they'll never see it coming. Uh-oh. We have a move 1 and strike. Oh boy. With +2 speed and +2 power.
Is this just the boring 5 power, 8 speed cross?
I think it's actually Talon Sweep. But I could be wrong. Let's see what's left. The opponent's checking too. It could be Talon Sweep, it could be Cross. Cross is actually pretty safe here. Looks like Fight is Wild Swinging. It is the Cross. It is a Focus, which is not going to die. Fight takes 3, draws a card, and misses. Alright, Fight runs back into melee.
Hugging face. Interesting.
No fear from this one. No fear, no regrets. And no blocks either. Alright, well, I'm not sure Fight has much choice. He's at least going to go down swinging, but I don't think he can win this.
I think a very specific sequence of events could happen and Fight would win, but I don't think they're going to happen.
It would require Luciya having neither of her ultras available, in my opinion.
Yes.
Well, if they're counting cards, Luciya does not have a deterministic kill. Or he's just being very careful to make sure it's deterministic, because this is a tournament game after all. Oh, Jeppies asks how many cards are in decks. Luciya has 7, Fight has 5. Decks are pretty thin. This is post-reshuffle for both players. Oh, preemptive.
That,
This is probably deterministic.
yeah, that probably will seal it.
Alright. Now there is a rule. If the player calls checkmate, he's guaranteed to have missed something and therefore lose. So, hopefully he didn't call checkmate.
So, Talon Sweep, which we know there's one available if I'm not mistaken.
Beats everything.
8 speed, 5 power.
Yep, that's it. Alright. Good game. Well, we'll be moving on to game 3. I'll switch the overlay. Alright. So, each player's strongest character is now out of the running. Reggie's Mole Knight and Jay's trademark Luciya. That leaves Beheaded and Remiliss and Fight and Ryu.
I think Reggie sticks with Fight.
I agree, and I think Jay returns to Remiliss.
That is probably correct. I'm not sure how good Jay's Beheaded is.
Neither am I.
He might switch to Beheaded, but I think if he switches to Beheaded, Reggie has more experience in the matchup, and that will serve him well. So I think switching to Remiliss would be better.
That makes sense. I know Reggie has some experience against Remiliss, since he's played against me quite a bit. Jeppy's asked, how close was game 1, since he came in a bit late. It was fairly close. Since it was a Remiliss game, it was fairly close. On most other characters, the inting life and board states would have looked basically long since decided. But Remiliss has immense late game damage, and brought back Brummel Knight from 23 to I think 8 on her last like 4 points of life.
Yeah.
Something like that. We do have the Remiliss, we do have the fight.
Into fight, cool.
Just as plans. All right.
So who would you favor in this matchup?
Remiliss.
Yeah, agreed.
It's not like the biggest thing, but to me it comes down to this. Fight can make anything stronger. Remiliss can make anything a little stronger, but faster. And Fight hates missing. So if you can go first and dodge him or stun him, you'll do pretty well. That's my reasoning. Now it's well known that I value speed very, very highly, disproportionately highly, probably. So that is probably a factor here.
It is probably less well known that I value speed at the appropriate amount.
How surprising that you would hold that opinion of yourself.
But I think as a Sagat main, I can say that statement with some confidence.
That's actually a good point. If you can play Sagat very, very well, then you probably are valuing speed exactly the right amount. Alright, well, Remiliss takes first. I believe we are post-mulligan already. We are off to a pretty intense start already with this matchup, because we know every turn can be incredibly impactful.
So I had 7 cards in hand, that means he prepped.
Oh, wait, what? Oh, I can't count.
I just like, hands look too big. What is going on?
My mistake. Alright, we have run and then we have dash. Remiliss moves in, Fight moves out.
Good ol' backdash.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. And it gives him a gauge, which means that it's basically a force neutral way to move around. Very, very useful. Range 3 is definitely better for Fight than range 1. Oh! Irradiate transforms. That is 1 out of 3.
Vroom vroom. So if Fight has a parry, he should probably go for the tendrils.
Agreed. Alright, chooses to retreat with that move effect. In other words, boosting just for +1 speed. Well, he must need it. Perhaps he has a dive in hands. Or an assault. Or even
it's not a terrible way
explosive
to start a boost war.
Mm-hmm. Especially because Remiliss, as a 7th cross character, or I should say, like most 7th cross characters, doesn't have much in the way of boosts to threaten stats. She relies on her character ability to provide her with outside stats, which it does admirably. Oh, we have a move action. Spinning an ultra.
Going to where speed does not matter.
Thus goeth the meme. In truth, speed matters quite a bit at range 1, for those who aren't as familiar with the game. This is because if you're faster, you have a better chance of playing something that can dodge a dangerous mid-speed, or even a slow attack. For example, Fight could play a dive, which would beat Remiliss's pretty hefty ground 0. Oh, Fight initiates...
Ruh-roh, Scoob.
Remiliss responds to the X. Oh!
Baited!
Nice!
Awesome.
Yeah, Fight plays a focus, and wins against the Grasp. EX Grasp.
And that was a Nat EX Grasp, so that is a lot of value lost, because that is one of her ways of speed checking Fight at ranges when Tendrils is up.
Mm-hmm, agreed. Without a copy of Grasp to threaten, it'll be a little bit more difficult for her to keep Fight honest on his mid speeds, or when positioning around ranges 1 and 2, after she has Tendrils in particular. Whew. Very good. Alright, she prepares. Just trying to build that hand back up. These are both very resource-sensitive characters. Neither of them have particularly good economy. Fight's economy is a lot better, but only if he continues to land hits. A single whiff can send him spiraling. Alright, he boosts Defend. Remiliss prepares again, putting her at a full hand size of 7 cards. Someone asked what is Fight's preferred range. Oh, I see you already answered. Yeah, Fight has a pretty flexible preferred range. The normals, of course, ground the Fight for everybody, or no pun intended. The normals ground the game at ranges 1 to 3. But he tends to prefer ranges 3 to 5. He acts more like a long ranger. We have a reading and a +2 power EX attack. Oh, wait. That's not an EX attack. That's 1 card. Excuse me.
Ooh, and the reading lands, because who would play a range 1 spike otherwise?
Yep. That is a successful reading, calling out the spike. And because it was not EX, Fight is comfortable pushing her back to range, since he did enough damage to stun thanks to that +2 power. It's a very good start for Fight.
Fight notably has enough gauge to flip now, although he doesn't necessarily have the boosts available to want to do that at this time.
Mm-hmm. Probably checking that very thing right now as both players are looking through the discard pile. So as a reminder, in case you missed the previous game, Fight Succeed lets him immediately play 2 boosts from his discard pile. Or, excuse me, put into play, right? Yeah, I think it's put into play. Let's see.
Yeah, they put into play.
Yeah, which the difference, for those not familiar, is that play means you pay the cost. Put into play means they just interplay without paying any costs. So this is useful. Alright, so the timing of his Succeed matters a lot because it's a quick surge in power, much like with Beheaded, actually. That means he's likely to win the immediately next strike.
It also meant, for those that were watching last game, that when that strike was whiffed, in addition to the literal force cost that was paid from that strike, the opportunity cost of the value of those boosts not being met was really bad.
Mm-hmm. Alright. Remiliss runs back into range 1.
Pretty normal Remiliss stuff, honestly. Fight going for the Exceed. He did have one that had now move 1 on it, which just uncornering is not terrible, just to have cross as an option, especially with Grasp literally gone.
Mm-hmm. And he's going to put that Fierce into play to try to get more value on the next strike, especially if he can win it clean.
Ooh, like EX Cross right here. The EX Cross +3. That'll hit for a lot and is really safe.
Oh boy. This is a pretty scary setup.
Everyone cashed in their channel points to get your emote.
I don't really know how that works. I'm still learning my way around Twitch.
They added in a system where if you watch someone, you passively gather points, and then occasionally there's a "Are you actively watching?" check where you just click a button and it gives you some more points, and you can cash in those points to like highlight your message or get a single sub emote for a day.
Oh, cool.
But you only have one sub emote, so you get your sub emote for a day.
Mm-hmm. Alright, we have an EX boost from Remiliss, and then Fight initiating with a +3 power strike from hand, together with +1 speed. This is extremely dangerous.
Do you think he's going fast or slow?
I think he's going fast. I wouldn't be comfortable as Remiliss here, because the threat of a speed 7 cross coming out is pretty intense. Well, Remiliss is having trouble deciding.
Plays a block.
It is fast. That's retreating bolts. He retreats 2 and has a grand total of 7 power, I believe.
So 3, so 5, 7. Yep.
Alright, so Remiliss currently has 3 armor and 4 guard, so she won't be stunned no matter what. She just has to decide how much she wants to spend.
So Remiliss and Fight are both actually very similar in that the act of hitting with their payout is good enough even if it ends up getting blocked.
Mm-hmm.
So just the fact that Remiliss had to spend resources on that, even though Fight didn't do damage, still advanced Fight's game.
Right. As long as he's landing a hit, it's going to his gauge, which means he is gaining some amount of resources that he can use to continue his assault. Or, you know, spike or dive or whatever. Alright, light boost from Remy. Light boost from Fight.
The full volley. Tech.
And tech. And light. Okay, well, that's one variation this can take. Emrakul asked, does Remiliss often want to exceed? No, actually. Remiliss likes exceeding specifically to close games, but she gets a lot more value out of her front side, like in terms of overall utility. Her front side is much more reliable. She wants to exceed in certain situations, but you should not mash exceed. Like, if you get 3 transforms, you shouldn't exceed just because. You should exceed only when you're ready and you're sure that it will help you.
Yeah, there's a bit of a meme line called Game Plan Remiliss where you just bum rush your transforms and then flip and try to hit with a 14 power ground 0. It's a meme for a reason.
Pretty fun meme, though.
It is very entertaining, but having good neutral is generally better than playing a line where you win or lose.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of good neutral, Remy is winning this boost war, but without Radiate available, she's not actually threatening anything here at range 5. So I kind of question the value of it.
We haven't seen any tendrils go down, so she could have threats if... Or just
Okay, good call. That is
boring.
Almost certainly the correct play.
Boring. Fight preps, that makes sense.
Yep. Range 4, Remiliss has a million times more threats than at range 5. At range 3, she has even more threats. Text the speed, that skyrockets her advantage.
I can't even say to go to range 1 is a meme, because that's how you eat a ground 0.
Yep. So she is up 3 speed and 1 power. Looks like Fight is willing to just eat the next strike, whatever it is he prepares, signaling that he's pretty much willing to lose the next strike, as long as he's able to have a firm enough footing to come back on the strike after that.
Losing a strike initiated at range 4 is pretty okay.
Mm-hmm.
Losing a strike initiated at range 1 would be really bad.
I can agree with that. I do think if Remiliss... I don't think she has the other nuclear option, but if she were to land nuclear option or tendrils here, well, yeah, that would be immense value.
Yeah, tendrils is pretty free. I think if Fight can trade into it, like with a sweep or something, that would be really, really good.
I agree with that. Yeah. Landing
Especially
tendrils would be great, but it'd be
can-
much better to move to range 2 and play tendrils.
Yes. And at range 2 it still is, what, literally 7 speed? Yeah, it's still
Yep.
pretty free.
I'm going to pull her discard pile up so folks in chat can see what she has available. So she's out of both irradiates and both dives, which means at range 4 she is only threatening nuclear option. And tendrils. Sorry. My brain skipped that because we just talked about it. She does have the other nuclear option though, so I miscounted in that regard.
CCing?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no move action. There's range 2. Alright, this heavily telegraphs that she has the tendrils in hands. But what do you do about that?
Parry it, hopefully.
Yeah.
What's the situation on blocks?
That's a good point. Well, that's not a block. That's not a block at all. He's got 1 block remaining total.
Uh, to
Whoa.
range 1, really. I would have
Whoa.
retreated to range 3.
He is confident. But there's no way he's holding EX Grasp or EX Retreating Bolts, so if she has tendrils, nothing beats it. Interesting. Absolute fearlessness.
Is it possible that Reggie's just not really thinking about the tendrils?
Possible. Well, there is an
Uh-oh.
EX attack, but I don't think it can beat tendrils. And it can't. It loses the speed tie. He does, however, get to retreat 3, which is still some amount of value because it puts him at range 5. Remy needs to decide whether or not to spin gauge to recur that. And she does. This makes sense. I mean, it is, after all, a threat at the current range.
It loses to explosive shot though.
Oh,
Or
it
no, wait.
does. Yeah, plus 3 explosive shot. Speaking of.
Oh yeah, 3 printed. Okay. Thought
Yeah.
I derped. But no, it does lose to it.
Yeah, we have a plus 3 power strike.
A very mysterious strike.
Heavily telegraphed explosive shot. Could also be electrocharge.
Kind of a whack mix
Ha!
up.
Nice. She plays Napalm Stream without EXing, which is just a way to mitigate the damage. So Napalm Stream guarantees she cannot take more than 5 damage no matter what.
Pretty good, but honestly, I think even with the ghetto, I take 1 less damage. This fight got a lot of value out of that strike, putting a railgun into gauge in addition to just hitting with the explosive shot.
I would agree with that. Because explosive shot has hit at the top of your discard tier gauge, the 2 force, the second card he spent was an ultra, which is worth 2 force, and it's worth 2 force from gauge as well, meaning he gets to kind of double dip into that force bank and get extra value. No, Jeppies. If non-EX cross had been played, it still would not have been stunned because Fight had stun immunity in play on a boost during that strike. During the Tendrils cross.
With his Red Horizon boost kit.
Alright, she's going to drop that nuclear option to advance 2 to range 2. Ooh, Fight is burning some resources. Retreat 2, and has a hit effect to put the top 2 cards of his deck into his gauge. Excuse me. Well, I guess he's telegraphing the other explosive shot now.
I mean...
Or he's just hoping that he draws it.
Forcing Remiliss to move in is not bad.
I can agree with that. And I don't think she has any way to beat it. Unless she has a cross? Nope. No crosses, no dives.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, she basically has to move in to do anything.
Juppy's explosive shot ignores armor. Yeah, explosive shot is a really good card.
Oh, as for why he EX'd the cross, it's almost certainly because he was trying to cover EX Ground 0. Since EX Ground 0, which, like, his attack... So, Remiliss's attack had plus 2 speed and also was EX. Ground 0 would have been speed 6. EX Cross beats the EX Ground 0 because of this. It, unfortunately does not cover tendrils.
When it comes to worst cases, especially with what happened immediately after that, I think it was pretty okay.
We have evidently a move action, or perhaps Remiliss is reconsidering. What? Retreating!
Awesome.
Planning on a poor man's tech in the near future, almost certainly, since at this range, 7, Fight can only hit with an ultra that's he can't afford right now. Remiliss probably about to wild swing just to get rid of that boost. Taxi meta intensifies.
I gotta say, I'm a touch surprised that Fight opted to prep instead of moving forward, but I guess just building up the resources into the very telegraphed poor man is
Responding from hands? Oh, for the movement. Okay.
Well, that card would have been a pain in the butt later, so I guess that is fine.
Yep, that's also both action and force efficient movements, since he did it during his opponent's strike, and is now going to play that +3 power explosive shot.
You can't avoid it.
Nope.
You must eat it.
Yep. That is
Takes
6. But that is both explosive
And
shots down.
The railgun continues to get recycled.
Alright, range 5 is not a good range for Remiliss, especially with literally all of her range 5 options down. She's going to pick something back up out of her discard pile. Probably
Maybe
either
a
Tendrils.
range 5 option.
Yeah, probably either Tendrils or a nuclear option.
I think Tendrils would be the better choice here. Please show what the card you picked up.
The opponent is parrying it immediately. Yeah.
Oh, option.
It was indeed a nuclear option. Oh, EX round 0. Alright.
Oh, that's lame. Should have played it.
This will let Remiliss use Power Cycle to rebuild her resources quickly. And get through that reshuffle into her second deck. What does what do, Juppies? Oh, Power Cycle? Yeah. When you change cards, you may draw an additional card.
I love Power Cycle.
It's good. It's good. It's probably the weakest of her transformations, and it's very good.
How many readings does Remiliss have available?
I believe only one. Yes, one.
Might be time for a fight to consider reshuffling.
Uh-oh. Danger.
Danger.
Okay, that is, Electrocharge getting boosted, +1 speed after retreat 1. Hoping to be able to escape the upcoming onslaught. I believe we have a Tendrils live, as far as current EX threats by the Yellow Death.
Tendrils would be funny. Speed 5, ends with Remiliss in the corner, but does get the auto dodge.
Yep, hits the world. The real question is one of follow-up. Does she have something to play after that, when Fights tries to go on the offense?
I hope.
No, Jeppies. Remiliss has access to Launch Sequence, which says when she reveals her attack, if a copy of her attack is in her gauge or transformation area, it is considered EX. Meaning, if she ever plays Irradiates, Ground Zero, or Toxic Tendrils for the rest of this game, it's EX. Remiliss, preparing, evidently, going to draw out that last card. 015, Tendrils, Consumption. Let's take a quick look here. Yep, there are no readings on Fight's side, so it's actually safe to have these normals for now. Makes sense to me. Does that explore begin? Yep. Fight moving in.
I 100% agree with this, especially to get the explosive shot back into discard.
Yeah, that makes sense. Fight is about to reshuffle. Fight is about to get readings.
That is a very dangerous hand to show, but...
Yep, that is Dive Assault, Spike, and Railgun. Something very bad is about to happen. I'm not sure which thing, but something. I guarantee that. I imagine it'll be reading Spike, play Assault. Although it depends, because she might want to get rid of the Dive.
Yeah.
Because at range 1, the Spike's not a huge threat.
Obviously, we don't know which of those Reggie just drew. But would it have been better to go for like a CC with some of the resources to minimize the punishment from getting readings?
Yes. Well, at most he drew one of them, right? So at most he would have one of those cards in hand. Probably the Assault if he didn't reorder his hand. So, yeah, probably. I do appreciate the fearlessness here, though. He may feel that he has enough of a life lead to close the game out, even if Remiliss comes in against him. I think that would be a mistake. So this is going to call one of the options that's Remy can beat, including but not limited to, you know, Spike or Dive. Name something and sets the attack, please. May still be considering what to say, though. Well, place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Is it going to be reading Spike or reading Dive? Or reading Assault?
I think reading Spike is good. Okay.
Yep. Works. Deals 4 damage, gains advantage, gets an Assault to engage, which is also valuable.
Notably, the Spike is not stunned.
That is true. After Retreat 1 is going to come into play here. They remembered! Hooray.
Yay.
That's not the okay. Alright, so it is Remiliss's advantage. A lot of juicy options here. And Fight has got to be feeling pretty pressured. Tendrils is pretty free, but it's not necessarily the most rewarding thing. I think Remiliss is likely to just change cards to dig deeper into that deck for more exciting options. No, Tendrils doesn't miss, Trapeze.
CCing away CCing everything. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Drawing a big, fresh new hand. Maximizing the chance to see some EX attacks.
Yep, and Ultras dispense to amp them up even higher. Whew, scary. Emrakul, there's a very good chance you'll get your wish. Emrakul said, Reggie seems like a good guy, but Emrakul wants to watch a comeback and see Remiliss win. Well, Remiliss is queen of comebacks, because she has immense late-game damage. I feel like I'm kind of rooting for Fight here, because I feel I need to root for the underdog in the current board state.
I'm rooting for a good Exceed game.
That's worthwhile, too. I do think that Fight, being up 9 life, is currently disadvantaged. But he can still win. He just has to call some mix-ups. Nah, that'll work just fine.
That's a good mix-up to call. It fell underneath the mat. They gotta like click on it to bring it up.
Oh, not on my screen. Just to your side, I think.
There we go.
Yeah. So Tendrils has 5 power. And Fight will just take the 3.
Huh. I think that was a mistake.
Maybe. It depends on what those cards in hand are. So range 1 is particularly scary against Remiliss because she now has access to an automatic EX ground 0, speed 4, power, if the opponent doesn't move, 14. Alright, we have a +2 power strike. That is an 8 power sweep.
That is ballsy.
Interesting.
But it worked.
Pulls
oh
ground 0.
God.
That is immense value. Remiliss is going to need to recur that from her discard pile ASAP. Spins 1, so 4 armor. 6 armor. I think it's definitely correct to take no damage here. 8 armor. Alright. Remiliss Aftershocks for block.
Looks like we're playing Remiliss.
So Aftershock returns a card from her gauge to her hand. Well, we went over this earlier. Suffice to say, it's not usually used for block. It's usually used for, you know, Napalm Stream, Nuclear Option, Ground 0,
Stuff with super high value.
Uh-huh. Stuff that doesn't risk getting readings for Spike. That's a parry. What?
What?
What? But why though? Okay, please return ground 0. What was the return?
I didn't see.
Wait, I can just check the discards. Okay, it was the ground 0. Alright. Let's see, +3 power and strike from fights.
But there's a known block in that hand. Why not reading and spend 1 from Gage?
Wait, there's a reading available. But what?
I mean, it is possible that Reggie did actually reading, declared it on voice, and that is why it is the top of discard.
That is possible. Not likely, but possible. We'll know very soon because Yellow Death will reveal her hands, if that is the case. I think we have gradually slipped into an alternate dimension as Remiliss is retrieving block instead of attacks that actually deal damage, and then block is being parried instead of just, you know, punched by fight. Strange world we live in. This is a relatively intense mix-up. I mean, Remiliss has to decide, is this spike or not spike, basically.
I love the spike, not spike mix-up. My favorite variant of this is it spike or is it Crusader's Oath?
Calls not spike. It's not spike. That is 2 gauge. Well, that explains the not spinning from gauge. So 1, 2, spent 2 force, I believe. No, 3 force. So 8 power. Remy takes 2.
Dumps the aftershock? How are you supposed to grab your blocks back?
Punk. Probably the ground 0. Yep, this is reasonable. Oh, that's great, actually. That'll hit for 11. Alright, so it pulls 1, then it gets +3 power, then it gets +3 power is the actual order of events here. So that'll drop fight to 6 health. He does have 2 force stocked, but that's not very much. Yep, gonna use that to CC instead of just prepping. When you're this low on options, this late in the game, you need to be aggressive about maintaining your options. Whew. This got a...
very exciting to have Wild Swung the Cross.
I agree. Exciting and very disappointing for me. That's a change card. It's probably going to draw the extra, and does so. And fight prepares. Oh, we have a natural EX? No. False alarm. I just saw 2 cards slip in the hand. Although, Yellow Death might still do that, and it's just J checking to see if the option is actually fully deducible. That's a natural EX attack. Oh my. So this could be Napalm Stream for 10. Or a nuclear option for 1,000,000 gauge. Oh my goodness. Alright, so nuclear option has hit at the top 2 cards of your discard to your gauge, which it will perform 3 times because this is the Yellow Death. And then 5 power dealing 3 damage, and then taking 3 damage in return. 4, 5, 6. So Remiliss now has a lot of force available. Unfortunately, most of these do not provide her meaningful automatic EXs, with the exception of Caustic Vents. Alright, so Fight is dashing backwards with Power Jump. Goes to his gauge as part of its effect.
This still kind of feels like anyone's game.
Yeah, I think with Fight in play, it could be. He's unusually... That is a natural EX or an automatic EX Caustic Vents, which will stun the Lightning Gun, and Remiliss does not kill herself. Alright, I just had to check real quick.
That's so funny.
Yeah, she draws 2, discards 1, draws 2, discards 1, draws 2, discards 1, deals lethal damage. GG. Whew. Deciding
Great
the game
stuff, Jay.
and the set in Jay's favor. Well played, both of you. That was exciting. That was intense. That got real kooky at the end there. Alright. Well, I hope everyone found this interesting and entertaining and exciting to watch. This was a round in the double limbs portion of Matchup Madness, the largest Exceed events to date, organized by TaxiCap, thanks Taxi, via TTS, Tabletop Simulator. If you're interested in Exceed and aren't familiar and would like to know more about what you see here, Exceed is free to try on Tabletop Simulator. Tabletop Simulator is not free, it's available through Steam. And this module, which I maintain, is called XFS Balanced Breakfast. Search for it on the workshop, try it out. You will not find rules included. If you want more information about the game, you can look for it on the Level 99 Games website, and find a link there to the Level 99 Organized Play Discord server, where the current community that's running this Matchup Madness events is located. Thank you very much, Blue, for joining me for this commentary and stream. And
Anytime.
am I forgetting anything?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, heck of a set. Until next time, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.